Okay, welcome everyone. Del, can you hear us? With kind of thumbs up, nice. Henry, perfect. Okay, hello everyone. It is 3:03. I will call our meeting to order. And I will call for adoption of the, approval of the agenda for today. I see Deb has moved, a seconder from Henry. Any opposed? None. We have adoption of the approval of the agenda and approval of the minutes from last meeting. How about the same two? Okay, perfect. So I saw Deb and Del. We have adoption of the minutes. Okay. All right, so the last, maybe I'm not following the minutes here. Is the next thing unfinished business? Am I correct? Yeah.
New business.
New business. Okay.
New business.
Thank you. So the new business, since we had essentially completed all of the tasks confirming the other aspects of the terms of reference, is the mayor and council remuneration for base salary. We had concluded that whatever we set for the mayor, we would continue to recommend 50% allocation for the members of council. And so I apologize to the members of the committee. I had said at the end of our last meeting that we'd be in communication through email to share ideas back and forth as to how we would come to a process of deciding how to make a recommendation for the increase in the mayor's salary. And I didn't send anything out. I didn't see anything from anybody else, but I know leadership starts at the top and it should have come from me. So I apologize to the other members. As a little background, we did determine that we recognized that the compensation was out of step with what the rest of the municipalities were doing. We had recognized that on a per capita basis, the mayor's remuneration was $1.74 per capita of citizenry. And that was not reflective of what the other similar type communities were, and that we should really be somewhere around $3 per citizen. Then our discussion was, well, that probably would be a fairly large bite to take in one chunk to go up to that point. And we went away to think about what were some of the other mitigating factors why some communities were the way that they were and were some outliers. And I think, and I had a brief conversation with Deb, and maybe I'll hand that over to you, because I think you probably, by my awareness, have done the most thinking on this.
Is someone speaking?
Hang on, we got a little bit of technical difficulty here with Deb, but in the gap, Del or Henry, did you have any thoughts on my comments?
Sorry, I'll be 1 second. Sure.
Not at this time. I did receive your initial proposed calculation, which I guess we'll talk to in a moment.
Yeah. Actually, I had some additional thoughts, and I wasn't sure how to share them between meetings. Did take a look at some of the other like municipalities and stuff like that, and I think one thing that I kind of drew from our last meeting is that it's hard to get an apples to apples comparison. That in order to kind of figure out what that is from certain municipalities. In some cases, when you look at population, some are paid well over what we are. Others are paid equally the same and stuff like that. So then it gave me some pause as to thinking about what's the best way to calculate or figure out what an appropriate amount should be. So I had some, things about what is that? Is there a baseline member amount that we are trying to get to or not? And I think it's a difficult question to answer.
Okay, thank you for that, Henry. In saying that, are you agreeing, disagreeing, or just making a comment on whether we should be increasing to something around the $3 per capita?
Yeah, I think I'm agreeing that there. I guess what I'm thinking is that I agree that there's probably likely an increase that needs to occur for mayor and council, but I'm not sure whether there is a peg of that $3 that $3 per capita is the number that we should aspire to, because there's a lot of other considerations for other municipalities who have that number in mind.
Okay, thank you. If we're ready now, I'll pass it back over to Deb for her thoughts.
Yeah, thank you. So when I put all the data into a spreadsheet, just so I could understand this in a snapshot, it was really clear to me some of the municipalities that were significantly higher, and one on a per capita rate. And one of the things that we had talked about in our last meeting was, what are some of the mitigating factors that are causing some of these communities to be so significantly higher? Like Pitt Meadows, well, they're $5.28 per capita. And one of the things we talked about was, well, they have an airport, and they're dealing with the additional complexities of Transport Canada and NAV Canada and so on and so on. But what I'm unclear about is, when we look at some of the other municipalities, what does White Rock have that would cause it to be $4.78 per capita? What does Souk have that we do not? What are some of the complexities that these other municipalities have? And what are the complexities that Colwood will have in the next 4 years moving forward as well, that would, in my mind, have bearing on the mayor's salary, the council salary, and and then obviously the per capita rate. And so I didn't have answers. And so it was a curious question in my mind of, okay, so Souk has passed their budget. They have a significant increase, which now brings their per capita rate to $3.14, if my calculations are right. So I don't know who to ask that question of, whether that's a Marcy question, whether that is somebody else's question to answer. What do we have as a municipality moving forward that would be additional complexities that our mayor and council would be dealing with? And what is your awareness of some of these other municipalities that what are the complexities that these other municipalities have that would be taken into account in their significant size salary differentials and this per capita rate? Is that a fair question?
I think it's a fair question. I don't know whether it can be answered.
No, no. So I guess in my mind, I was like, okay, justifying, or not justifying, but trying to wrap my head around what is a reasonable increase in salary, what is a reasonable per capita rate, what are we dealing with, so those are just some questions that I had.
For myself, it's a hard question to answer. I look at Souk, who just recently did an increase, and the population is very similar.
Mm-hmm.
The duties are very similar. So I don't know what their basis was for the decision. And I don't know if there were any different factors than there would be at Colwood. So it's hard to say without, going into the minds of the people that made the decision, because I didn't really see anything from the decision that just went through as to factors of why the increase. I think that they were looking at it to bring it up in line with other municipalities similar in nature. They used the same list that we had provided
Right.
on comparisons of ones that are similar in size.
Mhm.
So, you know, they ended up doing it on the 75th percentile for an increase.
Mhm.
So I can't answer that question, but yeah.
And we don't know what budgets the other municipalities may be proposing. Maybe everybody's trying to kind of bring it in line with each other and the comparative nature. And maybe the other ones are trying to get it to, an average of around 3 as well. We don't know that.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Deb. Yeah, I guess every community is going to have its own complexities and then its own reasons why not to do things. I think if we even look at the ones around us, we've got Souk has just bumped to 314 by your calculations. Sydney's at 322. Esquimalt is at $3.54. So it's reasonable to say that we should be around that $3 mark anyway. The challenge is just looking at, and I'm sure it can be justified based on any number of factors that the community has. The challenge is going to be one then of political appetite for council to accept our recommendation and move it forward, and then the political impact that will come from that, especially as we're into an election cycle in the fall. Not that should be what we think about, but it is a factor to be aware. And I'm going to open the floor up for discussion again.
One thing I was thinking about, and I was kind of in alignment with what Deb was saying as well, is that whether it is a comparable that we actually want to do in order to figure out the amount going forward that we want to increase, or whether we kind of just look at what Colwood has been doing and the work that the council has done very well in terms of the growth of Colwood and so forth, and then look at what is a digestible amount that we can provide them that all the constituents of Colwood would be happy to support and not challenge, because they say we're lining our own pockets type thing. So when I look at all that, the number I kind of came up with since the last meeting was kind of almost similar, Mike, to the ones that you presented in terms of somewhere between the 6 to 7% is something that I think most people kind of looked at as an amount that seems fair without it being like an overpay of any sort or be kind of negatively reflected by choosing that amount. So that's kind of where I arrived to, but it wasn't really based on comparison. It was just based on thinking about the extra work that needs to be done and the recognition that there's probably is a bit of an underpayment at the current rate.
Thank you, Henry. Del, did you have any thoughts?
Well, I liked your kind of quantitative analysis there of the per capita. I agree that
You're talking about Deb's?
Well, that's the one that you presented through email before the meeting. And I think at the end of the day, it's going to come down to a gut feeling, and what every average citizen will think it is reasonable. It has to fit a reasonable test. I think what is presented, 6%, is not out of line, given the massive amount of infrastructure and new development that has been progressing in the Colwood region. The ongoing, I guess, challenges will also be transportation and infrastructure to support this population growth. As we're now almost 20,000 people. So I think the end of the day is a recommendation based on reasonable factor. We're if we want to go into a percentile basis, like Sue has, I'm fine with that as well. But I think even just going with the incremental 4-year increments is a good approach, and is I think something that we could propose to the council.
Can I just throw one more thought into this for us to consider? And that's just looking at the COLA, the cost of living allowance and the CPI, 2% a year to our proposed 6 would be less than the cost of living average. So I don't know if that's something that we want to throw into our conversation or not. I think last year, most were working on a 2.5% for cost of living. We don't know what it's going to be this year.
Yeah.
But, is that something that we want to take into consideration when we're looking at these percentage increases? Just putting it out there for consideration and thought.
Okay. Thank you, everyone, for your well-reasoned and thoughtful comments. I think one thing, Henry, that you struck was, what would be acceptable to the citizenry, and we know they're not a monolith. There's a percentage right now that thinks that council shouldn't be paid anything because they're not worth anything. Well, there is, just statistically, we know that's true. And then then there's going to be a group that will think no matter what the recommendation is, that it won't be deserved. And then there'll be people that think that it's great, and there'll be a big bunch that won't really pay any attention and care. So I don't know that really has to enter into our thinking. The proposal that I put out there, again, with just 6%, which, to your point, is only going to be above the cost of living plus a little bit, especially I think it'll be over 3 this year on the adjustments. That really only gets us by the end of year 4 to $2.20 per capita. That still doesn't get us to the 3. So if our goal was to get to 3, it doesn't do it. So 6 isn't high enough. We probably have to go to something like 8 or 9 in order to even get it in the ballpark. And then the second part of my question is, do we need to do it in an incremental fashion, or like Soup did, all at once? Because if it's a political concern, sometimes it's easier to take a big bite out of something nasty first, and then have 3 years to forget about the taste and move on. So I guess my question then back to the panel is, should we be looking at an amount larger than what my draft proposal or my initial conversation proposal is? And if so, do we want to recommend an incremental or something else like an all at once? So I'm going to put it back to the team.
Can I push back a little bit, Mike? I think the one thing I'm pushing back on is whether we say that the factor of 3 is the right factor to try to achieve even. If we look at some of the municipalities, I do see that number in there, but then on the other hand, you look at our neighbor in Langford, and it's 1 point something, so it's not 3. So then how do we figure out that 3 is an achievable number? So I thought that the proposal you provided was quite reasonable to kind of lay it out in 4 years, and then can be reevaluated at that point.
Okay, so you're saying that we should be considering Langford more closely synonymous than the other municipalities?
No, I wouldn't say that. I'm just pointing out that it depends on which examples you want to use, that you're going to get to one number or the other. So it's not to say one is better than the other, but I just I feel like it's you can pick the ones you want and get the number that you want to achieve, but it's just, why did you pick that over something else? I don't think it's a clear answer as to why these ones are the right ones to use.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that. I appreciate the pushback. Deb?
Yeah, I mean, I hear Henry. I hear what he's saying. I guess the argument could go the other way as well, Henry. You know, we're looking at some of the other bordering municipalities like View Royal, and their per capita is, you know, 284 versus Langford, which is 169. So I hear you. I hear what you're saying. I think it's an argument that could almost go either way. And I think Mike was looking at this and saying, well, you know, it appears that 3 is around what some more in line with what some of these other guys are doing, but I don't know if there was really a scientific
No.
process that you arrived at that number, but yeah, I don't really have anything further other than I hear what Henry's saying, but I think it could go either way based on the chart that I have in front of me.
Okay. Del?
Yeah, I think the difficulty is that, you know, everyone's using a different algorithm across that, and we can't compare apples to apples here. Again, the science versus the the feeling, the art, or if you will, is got to come together, and then, you know, and it's something that we could stand by, and representing the constituents and our fellow citizens that you know, don't scratch their head like when the property tax season comes and it's like, oh my god. And again, like, I think that, you know, the remuneration is really to, in my mind, fulfill some of the time, that commitment to the citizens. It's not to, you know, as cost of living was talked about, it's not to, it's a factor, but it's really about time and the time commitment. And people are not doing this to supplement income, I don't think. And in most cases, it's a higher calling. It's a higher calling to, you know, do something for the community and improve the community and establish those partnerships. So in the end, it's the number is going to be the number, and I think it just comes down to, is it something we can swallow and stomach, and will the, and in turn will the council be in favor, and they have that right for first right of refusal. They can reject our proposal and have their own way of deciding, but in the end, it's just proposal conducted by a cross section, a very small cross section of the citizens of Colwyn. So in the end, it's going to be a perfect balance of science and art. So I'm in favor for $3 as a medium, and for per capita, and an incremental approach.
Okay. Thank you. Marcy wants to say something?
I just wanted to remind you on the current bylaw, just so you are aware. So last time when they put forward the increase to the remuneration, they also put a space in there for it would increase by a yearly factor that was either equal to annual staff increases or the consumer price index for the prior year for Victoria metropolitan area, whichever is higher. Just so you know that they had that in there, that it was either or.
So there's going to be a CPI increase anyway. So ours actually should be in addition to that. So if we're saying 6% and CPI is going to be 2, 2.5, or 3, that actually gets that would be a more significant increase than even the spreadsheet I sent out. Okay, thank you. Marcy, is it, if we make a recommendation that goes to council, can we make 2 an option A and an option B, and then they vote on that?
So after this meeting, if you make a decision on all these aspects, I intend to bring a report forward to the committee for the next meeting. And after that, as per the terms of reference, the report is supposed to be submitted to the Chief Administrative Officer, who will present it to the committee of the whole, which is council sitting as a committee, who will bring forward a recommendation. So options is always a good thing to put in there, to give them a couple of different options. But at the end of the day, it will be the CAO that's bringing forward your report and your options. So by all means, we usually bring forward 2 to 3 options for council when they're making considerations on matters like these.
Okay, well then what I would recommend doing is amending that spreadsheet that I had sent out that has 6%. If we assume that the CPI will be 2, which I don't think we can, but just for a base, I would have 2 plus 6 for 8, 2 plus 7 for 9, and 2 plus 8 for 10%. And then at least there's a range of 3.
Can I just ask for some clarification?
Yes.
So how it was in the past bylaw was either based on CPI or annual staff increases, whichever was higher.
Right.
Do you think that you would choose CPI only and remove the staff increase option, or you
No,
want to keep it the same?
Yeah, I would keep the same thing, but if the staff increase is the lower of the 2, then it should be the CPI plus our recommendation.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Again, I don't, just because I'm sitting in the chair doesn't mean that I'm making the decision. So I don't want to seem like I was pushing that through. Does anyone disagree with what I just said?
Sorry, I have a question for what you just said.
Okay.
So given that there is a choice, a CPI, and we're saying that 6% on top of that,
Yes.
or the staff is going, or the staff increase, but that doesn't, to me, that kind of almost invalidates the or part, because I'm not seeing that staff increase is going to be like 8+% in any year going forward. So to be clarified that that's what we're comparing in terms of which option we vote, or what happens in each year.
Yes. So just to clarify what I think you asked, Henry, was that you're saying that the proposal to have a CPI plus our percentage increase, or a reflection of the staff increase, you're saying that you would be surprised that the staff increase would be as significant as what we were going to be proposing?
Yes.
Yes, I think that's probably accurate, since I would assume that staff are at some type of remuneration that is competitive. Whereas we know right now that council is at a remuneration that is not comparable to other municipalities. So we're already starting from an assumption that we have to increase the council compensation. Is that fair, what I just said? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So I guess the proposal I'm saying is that I will rework that little spreadsheet that I set out, that will assume CPI is 2. We're going to look at what 2 plus 6, 2 plus 7, and 2 plus 8 would be, and reflect that in a proposal for 4-year increments. And then that could be in the recommendation in the final report, and council can consider that as what we think would, at least, it doesn't get us to 3, but it gets us closer to $2.50 per citizen.
We didn't address your question of, do we do it all at once?
Thank you. Would you like to address that?
Well, as the committee, is that something that we feel impassioned to bring forward as another option? So option A could be what you just said, or option B could be to do it all at once. I don't know if that's something that Henry, you're shaking your head.
No, I don't think so. Given the climate that we are in right now, to provide that kind of an increase, I don't think we reflect positively.
Yeah.
Del, do you agree?
Yeah, I would agree with that statement, to be a bit tone deaf to the current market climate we're facing. And where all costs are higher, but it's, yeah, we're going through a little bit of a, a challenge in terms of costs higher and wages staying the same. But I think we have to do it in a way that, because in the end, it's the citizens paying for these increases. So it ends come back down to the citizens.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you. I just wanted to make sure that we had
Yeah.
discussed that because Mike had brought that forward. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I'm of that opinion too. 25% of me would say just do it, and eventually it'll be old news, but it would be a difficult thing. It might even be so controversial that there would be no movement going forward, and the whole thing would be moot. So just to wrap this up, then I like what you said, Del, about people doing this in the public good, because I know part of our initial conversation was, are we looking at this as compensation as a method to attract other people who might not necessarily step forward? And I don't think that any of the increases that we would be looking at right now would be significant enough to tip somebody over the edge of I'm going to run or I'm not going to run based on the compensation. But to your point again, Del, it at least compensates someone who recognizes that there has been some compensation for what they put in from their own time into the public good. So,
yeah.
Marcy, maybe if that can be somewhere in the document, the public good, I think that's a powerful phrase.
Agreed.
Yeah, thank you. So that brings that part to an end. And so then the next, are there any other issues in the terms of reference that we need to finish off on?
Did we touch upon any of the allowances for expenses?
I think we agreed to keep them as they
As they were,
yeah.
Okay.
At the last meeting, you actually made a suggestion for looking at expenses by changing the per diem from 80 to 100. But just so you know, that is an existing policy that encompasses both council and staff. So that would have to be a change that would be brought forward, I would think, over a whole, which I'm not sure how that would go over. But either that, or they would have to do a separate policy specifically for council.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, thanks, Mike. Thanks for that. I would say that given that that situation, I would retract the increase and leave it as is to be in line.
Yeah, that was my misunderstanding. I thought that was also part of what we were going to be agreeing on. But if it's going to require a separate piece of activity, then no. Thank you. So then the last piece was just the time frame that Marcy had put together for us, that we our timeline was the first council meeting in April 22nd. By July 31st, the deadline to have the report completed. The findings go to the committee for consideration in August, and then the draft bylaw presented to council for consideration. Yes. You're hoping that the final report can be presented to the committee on the whole of July 4th, which the recommendation going forward to July 11th. Well, if we have agreed to this point, and I can send out what I said I would send out later today or tomorrow, that still puts us in that time frame. That's more than a month. Okay. All right. Does anyone want to discuss that?
So that just in terms of meetings, I think we have one more meeting, correct?
Well, we have one more scheduled. Do we need one more meeting?
Yeah.
I guess we would review the report.
Yeah.
What did I do without you, Marcy?
It might be the final, just kind of like, these are the options. Just to put it in a more public domain, that the consideration that will be are options that will be put forth to the CAO, and then it might be a very short meeting, but it's kind of just the final due diligence.
Right. Okay. So the next meeting will be our review and approval meeting for the recommendation report.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Okay. Oh, who says government doesn't get anything done? No one says that. Okay. So then any other new business or comments? Deb, Henry?
I've got one comment, and it's more a question to the committee members. So this time we foregone the review of the responsibilities of the mayor and the council members, and I think that was a good move for us. We didn't have the time to do it. I think a recommendation going forward for the next time around would be to have allocation of time to do that, so that if we do want a larger increase or something to the remuneration, that we would have the time to reflect that by reevaluating the responsibilities as well, and that could be a good way to justify a further a different amount.
Okay.
Did I freeze?
I think they froze.
Oh.
Unless Mike's really pondering that. Oh,
Yeah, I don't know.
speechless. Okay.
It might give feedback. My apologies. Well, yeah.
Sorry, technical difficulties again. Can you guys hear us?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
So they
Yeah,
can still
we-
hear me and you guys, I think. So
They hear me and
can you hear Mike?
In the distance, yeah, but not clear.
Yeah.
Why don't we refresh it? Not clearly, if the computer's frozen.
Oh, everything's frozen.
Yeah.
Oh,
So,
I just thought Henry's statement was so monumentous that everyone was shocked.
no. Maybe what I
I
should
practiced
do
it,
is
I
just
practiced it.
restart the meeting on here. So I'll just restart this. Yeah. Please just give us a couple minutes. I'm just going to restart the meeting on our end here.
And I know somebody else will be right. So.
I think we were sort of
He's
wrapping
making
up
some
Henry's.
really great statement apparently.
Yes.
It happens to all my good speeches.
Okay, Henry, can I ask you to begin again your pithy statement on recommendations for the next time?
Sure, Mike. I can almost relive it, I think. I think for the recommendation for the that we want to write up, we might want to put a recommendation in there to have an evaluation of the mayor and council responsibilities next time, because I think having that evaluated, which we didn't do this time, and for good reason, with the time that we had, it wasn't possible. The next time we have the time to spend on that, so that any remuneration type recommendations can be with the basis of whether expanding responsibilities or having to look at the responsibilities that they might have. And that would provide, I think, a justification that could then maybe we could move forward with people being a little bit more accepting of that amount.
So I think it's certainly fair to open the door to doing a review of responsibilities of mayor and council, but I'll hand it over to Deb for her thoughts on that.
I hear what you're saying, Henry. I actually think it would be really complex and much beyond the scope of a committee. I think that's almost a consultancy role at that point. And then what are they comparing? Are they comparing roles and responsibilities with other municipalities and the other mitigating factors as to the size of the salary and the size of the municipality and, you know, some of the other metrics. So I hear what you're saying. I don't disagree that it would be potentially a good exercise, but I think that would be a huge ask for committee members from the community, and it may be better tasked to a consultant or something, but that's my 2 cents.
No, I completely agree with that. I don't think it's a committee. It's not a committee to do that, but it could be something that is embarked upon by council.
Good. Okay. Well, thank you everyone for your time today. I will call for a motion to adjourn our meeting. So moved by Dell and seconded by Henry. Any opposed? Seeing none, we'll adjourn the meeting, and thank you everyone for your commitment today and to staff as well.
Thank you, Chair. All right, have a good day.
Thank you.